All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Newcastle City Council special meeting for Tuesday, February 7. We are going to hold a study session tonight where we will hear a presentation from the King County Solid Waste Division on the RE+ program. And with that, who is my presenter on Zoom?
Sure. This is Jeff Bronze, Public Works Director. I'll be introducing, this is Pat McLaughlin. He's the Director of the King County Solid Waste Division, and he's here tonight to give you an introduction to the RE+ program. And if you'll remember, we've had some little gremlins in the machine here, so what I have to do is basically cut our mics and turn on his mic so we don't get that bad feedback. So there'll be a little delay as I transition.
So if you could hear me, I was planning to share my screen, if that's okay.
Yes, go ahead. That's fine.
Awesome. Okay, and the reason I chose to do that, I'm glad that you have the full presentation because there is a lot of good information there. I'm going to be using the same basic presentation. I have hidden a few slides just so that we could have more time for discussion. I thought maybe I could hit some of the key themes around this RE+ program and then allow us to dive into whatever direction would be of interest. As I do this, first, let me just confirm you can hear me okay and see me okay? And I guess perhaps because you're muting your mic.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, presumably, is I'm going to go through the entire presentation because it sounds like having dialogue in the middle of the presentation might be difficult. Is that true? You can even instant message me or chat with me or whatever. But anyways, I'll go through the presentation and then I will pause and we can start our dialogue if that works for you. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm hoping that you can see my screen, and let's just make sure that I can see you good. Oh, we can have dialogue. Okay, awesome. Okay, great. Then I would ask that as we go through the presentation, just interrupt me. I'll try and take pauses here and there, but feel free that if you'd like to explore a particular topic on the screen or on anything related to that, just please. I won't necessarily see you raise your hand because of my screen setup, so please just feel free to speak forward.
Yeah, we'll go at the end, I think.
Okay, let's see if I can get this. There we go. So you can see here that we've got a fancy little icon that dances around on the screen. And this is really kind of the heart of RE+. RE+ is really about rethinking how we view and manage materials that have historically been treated as garbage, but in reality, they are resources. It's about reusing the water bottle. Well, that's not too innovative. I think a lot of us do that now. repairing the bike, restoring that piece of furniture, reducing our consumption, and really rethinking our purchasing habits to begin with. Replus is a way of capturing all of these rewords to really help us rethink our future. You know, the core mission around what we're trying to achieve is to get at the heart of a problem that is really a local problem for us. On one hand, we're really fortunate to have a local disposal solution in Cedar Hills. We can take and manage our waste locally. So many communities can't do that. So many communities have to ship their garbage to other communities to manage, right? And we're fortunate that today we have a resource in Cedar Hills. However, 70% of what goes to that landfill doesn't actually belong there. It's not waste. It can be and should be recycled and put through a new life. And really, Replus has a mission and a vision aimed at doing that and ensuring that we can continue to have a healthy, safe, and thriving community, waste-free here in King County. What does it look like, though? You think about, you know, the idea of reusing and reducing and restoring and the sort. We can put tangible impacts to those actions. First of all, when we reduce the waste going to the landfill, or not the waste, but when we reduce the resources that are going to the landfill, that's tonnage, right? We estimate about 465,000 tons that doesn't go to the landfill. That means that's fewer trucks going to the landfill, right? It's ensuring that the landfill life remains available for what is really needed, and that is to manage waste, okay? The trees, right? You could save 1 million trees. That's fewer trees to cut down to create paper, right? The number one commodity, if you will, going into the landfill is food waste. It's tragic. 28% of the tonnage into the landfill is food waste. And much of that food waste was edible food waste. Edible for people who are hungry, right? 92,000 people could be fed by preserving that food before it is wasted. We like to also think of Replus as being an economic engine, because when we talk about diverting these resources, processing these resources, and sorting them and reproducing new items, those are jobs that don't necessarily exist today, right? There's new infrastructure needed. We estimate over 500 new green jobs for this region, right? And as we listen to daily newscasts about local layoffs, jobs are going to continue to be really, really important here. We also know that Cedar Hills won't last forever, and that we are going to have waste to dispose of in some manner. And what we also know is every other disposal option available to us is more expensive than what we have today. So the less we have to put through it, the better. We estimate we can save on future disposal costs by about $24 million, right? And when you think about all the plastics that are going into the landfill, we could burn 150,000 fewer barrels of oil. So there are real ways to tangibly measure the impacts of what Replus can actually do for our region, just for our region alone. And what's also really important to know is we're not starting from ground zero. This region has long been a leader in environmental action. And in fact, here on the screen are just a few examples where, in partnership with the cities, leaders across our county have taken action around a strategic climate action plan that really anchors our commitments to achieve carbon neutrality and even beyond carbon neutrality, achieving zero waste of resources, and particularly on those materials going to the landfill. Our King County Equity and Social Justice Strategic Plan also calls out for investments to address the disproportionate burdens that are happening associated with these environmental impacts of waste. We have a comprehensive plan that your city helped to shape in 2019 that really began to strengthen the policy and framework for the types of actions that we're going to be talking about this evening. And several cities have signed the K4C commitment, again, harmonizing regional commitments around doing the right thing environmentally. So we have got a fantastic foundation from which to build upon as we think about RE+. But we also know that we rely on our citizens and our businesses to carry out these actions, right? And I know that depending on where you live, work, and play in King County, recycling is really different and it's confusing. But I also know that our constituents, they want to recycle, right? In fact, we conducted a study of over 1,000 folks here in King County just to kind of learn about their mentality around this RE+ program and how would they react to our efforts around climate change and reducing the amount of materials being sent to the landfill. And in fact, that's all we really told them. We didn't even get yet in this, when we first engaged in this survey, we just kind of presented it at that high level to say, does that sound good? Is that the right thing for us to be focusing on? Would you support that? And what this graph shows you is that with very little information about the RE+ program, citizens were very supportive, right? 63% supported that, 8% opposed, and 29% said, I don't know, I don't know enough. I need some more information, which is understandable, right? So we spent some time with them and told them more about this program. And we went through a number of elements around harmonizing what recycling looks like across King County, pursuing legislation that would allow us to be more effective in developing markets and diverting materials with the help of producers having some skin in the game. Focusing on organics management at the curbside, and just a number of elements around kind of the underpinnings of what RE+ would look like. And what you can see as they began to learn about these elements and what RE+ looked like, at least 2/3 of those asked had very strong support for these different program elements, very strong support. Overall, as we spent time, and again, when we first said, "Hey, are you, this program which you haven't heard anything about, how supportive are you?" Remember, 63%. By the time we were able to educate them on the various program elements, that level of support skyrocketed to 88%. Right now, an additional 2% fell in that opposition category as well. But we have an incredibly supportive environment, I think, from which to work. And I think that's important for all of us because the work that is ahead of us is not easy, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about it. And before we get into some of those specifics, I wanted to point out that, and I said this earlier, we've long been a leader in our environmental efforts here in King County. And our residents and our businesses, they have that desire to recycle and the desire to do things the right way. We just don't always make it very easy for them. It's confusing. But nonetheless, when you look at curbside collection of the non-organic materials, right? So, the paper, the plastics, the glass, that sort, we crush it. C&D recycling, construction, demolition, debris recycling. We have an incredible network set up in King County to divert and recycle those materials. Yard waste collection as well. We've done really well, even today, we are amongst the national leaders in terms of our overall recycling rates. However, if you look at this graph, you can see, and this is just going from 2010 to 2017. If you drew it a little bit further to present day, we might pick up another percentage point or two, but overall, our progress has been really flat. You know, so we're running out of gas, and we have to really rethink what our recycling and waste management program looks like. And I know that when we go back in time to even the 1990s, when we didn't have curbside recycling in a standard form and fashion, but this region decided to get on the same page and launch the single stream recycling. We went from recycling rates that were about 19% to over 45% in 5 years, right? So when we get on the same page and when we commit to these types of programs, we see real sustainable results. And we've built on that, but we're at a point in our journey that needs something new, because we're lagging when it comes to collection of organics. In fact, we have the wrong schedules. So if you think about the fact that 70% of what goes to the landfill doesn't actually belong there, it means we're putting things in the wrong bucket, right? In the wrong bin. We don't need weekly garbage service. What we need is weekly recycling service, because most of our tonnage is recycling. And the stuff that smells, the food waste, that needs to be recycled, right? So that keeps going away every week. It's really the waste, which is a much smaller pile, that should be on an every other week schedule. We need producers to also have some skin in the game. Right now, producers are incentivized to create incredible products that are catering to the interest of their customers. They don't have the built-in motivation to make those products recyclable or even made with recycled content. There are some that are growing and leaning more towards that, but we are far from having enough kind of common commitment and market demand for that. And so extended producer responsibility is actually a legislative effort underway right now that brings the producers to the table, because right now it's up to you and me as local government to figure out how we're going to pay for the waste management and the recycling management. And as you've seen with the commodity markets being so volatile, recycling has become very expensive at times, and the producers have no skin in the game. And we think it's time to change that. Also banning food waste from going to the landfill, right? Doesn't belong in a landfill. So there's some key areas where we're lagging, and where if we kind of become a bit laser focused in these areas, we can move the needle quite substantially if we do it together. So we call these fast start actions. We're focusing on plastic and paper. And I mentioned that presently in legislative session, there is something called the WRAP Act. It's focused on plastic and paper packaging, and it introduces requirements for the producers to help bring funding forward to create recycling markets and processing capabilities to increase the amount of recycled material in their own products, and really kind of have what we call a circular economy, where they're buying back. These producers would buy back the very materials that they created to begin with, right? And so there's an opportunity for you as a city to weigh in on this and show your support around these legislative matters, and would certainly encourage you to consider what that might look like for Newcastle. Another area is around organics. I talked a little bit about this already. We're going to amplify our focus on single family collection. We're going to be doing it both in the unincorporated areas, but we're really asking to partner with the cities to help us do the same. We need to work in concert with the cities. And we also need to focus on non-residential food waste. There's a lot of, when we think about the 50,000 tons of food waste that's going into landfill, a lot of that is non-residential food waste. And that's really another target we have. There's some new organics legislation that was passed last year and is in the process of being implemented that's going to help support this focus on organics. And we're doing a lot of work in the community as well. Both having assembled a community panel to help inform and engage, supporting both our equity and social justice commitments to ensure that the disadvantaged communities and the lesser represented communities have an influential voice in our policy and our efforts, but also collaborations with the city and local business. We have a lot of grants that we're putting out to help fund both for cities and for local businesses to help fund the work behind these fast start actions. And I'll tell you another element that's underway, and I'm really excited about this. It's on a screen called mixed waste processing. It's a great kind of final screen. It's a last ditch effort, but I think we may need a last ditch effort, even with all these other efforts underway. But we are in a pilot with a company called Georgia Pacific, and they have a very fascinating and proprietary system that has proven capable of processing garbage. It's unsorted garbage, and they process it and recover recyclables from it. So we're starting this month, we're going to be sending down 1,000 tons of material through their system to see what sort of recycling recovery we could realize. And that might be a part of our future system as we think about different technologies and approaches going forward. So all of these things, I kind of painted a bigger picture at the beginning of the presentation, talking about the tonnage and the trees we could save and the people we could feed and the jobs created and the costs avoided and the barrels of oil that would never need to be burned. What that equates to is 300,000 to 400,000 tons of material that would not be going into our disposal system. And that has, somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000 metric tons of CO2 equivalents every year. It's a substantial amount, right? So this work is going to require action, right? It's going to require funding. This, recycling isn't free. We have to change behaviors, which means we really have to connect with our community. We have to help them understand the impacts that they have by the behaviors that they're making, good or bad, and help them see the potential and the benefits that this region can actually realize through these actions. We want to partner with the city of Newcastle. We want to help the city of Newcastle identify specific actions that you could take through policy, through your contracts with your haulers, through focus of your recycling programs. We want to bring information and resources to you and work alongside you to help fuel this RePlus program in your own community. And one of the asks that we have is for your council to consider signing our RePlus pledge. And the pledge, similar to how the K4C, King County Cities for Climate Change program was initiated, is simply it outlines the principles and the commitments of this RePlus program and commits the city to work in partnership with the others to enhance our efforts to really achieve that vision of RE+, right? Knowing that it's going to really require a broad and common investment of effort. Already, we have 4 cities who have signed the pledge: Shoreline, Woodinville, Clyde Hill, Snoqualmie. Several others are staging to do so. We are, just as we're here this evening in your study session, we're meeting with other cities to share the kind of this opportunity. You can see you're already on the good list here of having received this RE+ presentation, and we've got a few more scheduled. We are targeting to get all of our cities to sign the pledge. Of course, that's our goal, and we hope that that your community here in Newcastle will perhaps be the next. And I'm certainly here this evening to kind of introduce this and share the framework of RE+ and answer questions that you might have. And I've also provided here on the screen contact information for Patty Liu. And I regret, as much as I'm pleased to have this opportunity as the Director of Solid Waste, be able to spend some time with you this evening. I'm happy to be here. Patty Liu is just fantastic as our RE+ program manager. And if you thought this was a pretty good presentation, imagine if Patty was here. She would have really crushed it. But she is available to you on every other day of the week as our program manager to provide additional information and to help bring forward additional resources as we partner with Newcastle in this effort. So this was a slice of the full presentation that you did receive. I'm happy, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and just give an opportunity to engage with you, and we can dive deeper in any one of those areas that you'd like to, if there's some things I can clarify, or maybe there's something I didn't talk about and you got some questions there. I'm happy to try and address those as well.
Mr. McLaughlin, thank you. So we need to manage our microphones here. I don't even want to hear myself talk once, much less than twice. So thank you so much, Mr. McLaughlin. Council, any questions for Mr. McLaughlin? Raise your hand, please. Councilmember Villasenor.
Thank you so much for your presentation tonight. I know that as you were chatting, I know you were really addressing sort of upstream and downstream ways to handle recyclables. And I know that I personally, last year, and a number of people I know were challenged by giving away or giving away larger items, things like sofas and chairs and those types of things that even though there are platforms at which you can try to give those things away, it can be challenging from an individual standpoint. I mean, is there anything in the plan that helps us to facilitate the reuse of those types of items versus the things that we consume and throw away? These things that you might consider more durable?
That's a great question. And I just want to confirm, can you hear me okay? Or do I need to pause before I begin answering?
You can go ahead.
Great. So it is part of our consideration. We know that some communities have had good success with exchange programs where you can kind of go in as if it's a store and shop and just to pick some of these items up. Some communities are well organized to divert those materials to needy families and the sort. We don't have an identified solution here. I think it is something that through the community panel, we can also explore and learn a little bit more about how that might look. Right now, I know in my local community, we've had pretty good success with both using kind of your local community boards of just promoting, hey, I've got this item. In other cases, going to local churches and places of worship and sharing with them, and of course some of the more traditional thrift stores and the sort that sometimes accept. Although I know that in recent years they've become a bit more restrictive. So we certainly will explore additional possible approaches, but we don't have anything specifically identified that I'm aware of yet.
Any other questions? Councilmember Lakota.
I just have a question around, have you thought about working with corporations, especially Amazon, being a Washington state company? And what I see, their packaging are sometimes so unreasonable. I mean, a small item will arrive in a big box, and also the bubble packets that come, I don't know if that's even recyclable, because, our boxes say that, no, you cannot put any thin plastic in it. So any plans around that?
Yes, a portion of this REPlus work is focused on the business community specifically, looking at the generators, whether it's consumer packaged goods, companies like Amazon, or even large grocery stores or venues of the sort. So we are preparing to organize an outreach where we're connecting directly with businesses. Those businesses in turn can also be sources of influence. And so we do see that as an important and integral part of this REPlus journey. And the work that we're trying to accomplish through the legislative session as well is directly focused on paper and plastic packaging, because as you've pointed out, that can be really problematic and wasteful.
Councilmember Clark.
Thank you, Pat. Thanks for the presentation. Question about the food waste, right? That seems like a pretty big hurdle to overcome, people's habits over generations, just throwing it in the garbage. If it seems to me that's going to be your most difficult step. Would there be some kind of, remediation to people or penalty if they don't start throwing it in the proper waste receptacle? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I'd say it's a multi-pronged approach. We always suggest starting with information, and sometimes I think people just don't realize how much food is wasted in our home. It's estimated that 25% of the food you purchase you throw away, and that's just that's a staggering number. And I think and we have various educational campaigns. One of them is actually called Food Too Good to Waste. And so education and outreach is an important first step. Policies, I think, are also something that we need to consider. Right now, whether it's food waste or cardboard or plastic, any recyclable item, you don't actually have to recycle it, right? There aren't policies in most parts of our regional system that actually require us to recycle. We talk about how important it is, but we say, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. I think that's something we should revisit. Specifically around food waste, our absolute best strategy is to inform prevention, to inform and influence prevention strategies. That's how hungry people get fed, right? Is through the prevention work. There will be some food waste that comes through the system, and please understand, we are not advocating that that we feed people the food that's in our garbage bins. Once it's there, it's too late, right? But we're realistic, and in fact, some of this food waste that goes into the landfill is spoiled food. It could have been damaged in any number of ways. So we are also looking at, and this is where the opportunity really comes with the commercial sources of that food waste. There are alternatives to process that food waste for a secondary use, and that could be to create a slurry. One of the technologies that we're thinking about is a digester that we could feed a food waste slurry into and actually create gas, a renewable source of energy, create revenue stream off of that, not put that food waste in the landfill, right? But instead use it to produce energy. There are other technologies where you could, some out on Vashon Island, actually create a soil amendment and a fertilizer from some of these materials. So there's different technologies that I think are available to us that we're exploring. Prevention is going to be our first key. I think policies are going to be an important mechanism as well.
Any other questions? All right. Oh, Councilmember Griffin?
Is it true that the best place for food waste is in the yard waste?
Presently, that is,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, Mr. McLaughlin, I have a question. I could probably put it into one word. It's called styrofoam. I don't think anyone dislikes that product more than me. And I know that a lot of pharmacies use it to ship medications because they have to be cold packed. And that's very critical, of course. But there's probably a number of retailers, et cetera, who package things in styrofoam, and I just feel like there are a million different ways around it.
That frustration, both as a manager of this regional system, as a consumer, styrofoam is challenging and it's problematic. It is recyclable, but there are limits in terms of capacity in doing that. And I think that as you've said, there are better ways to package products, more environmentally responsible ways, and I think that's something we just need to continue to push towards.
And styrofoam cannot. Thank you. Styrofoam cannot be put in your regular recycle bin. Am I correct on that? I've always seen separate recycles.
You are correct. It's recyclable if you take it. Now we have a few transfer stations that accept styrofoam, and there are a few companies you can take those to directly, but it cannot go in your normal recycle bin. It has to be taken directly to a collection point.
Thank you, sir. You're a saint over there for managing this, by the way, Director Bronze. All right. Any other questions? Oh, Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. I was curious, so you talked about legislation as a tool to sort of encourage.
I'm sorry, I can't hear the council member.
Thank you, can you hear me now, Mr. McLaughlin? Thank you. So you talked about legislation as a tool to encourage more climate-friendly and actions that help you do your job better. I know you talked about a legislative agenda. Are there municipal level legislation or actions you've seen that have made a positive difference and made your work in the county easier? And can you give us examples of those, if so?
Yeah, and I want to be careful about I'm not here to lobby for specific legislative action. But I do want to point out that there are a few solid waste and recycling matters that are specifically under consideration by our legislature in this legislative session. And I would encourage your city to, if you're not already aware and engaged on it, to do that. And we can share the information we have. We actually talk about it at our monthly advisory committee meetings that you are invited to. And to try and answer your question more directly, you know, and this is probably something you share with your own constituents as well. You know, your voice matters. And so in this legislative process, when we have cities who come forward, some of these legislative matters might be before the King County Council. And so I will tell you with absolute certainty that whether it was around the comprehensive plan or any of our other decisions around disposal technologies or siting of facilities, they always want to hear from our cities. They ask me, what is the voice of our cities telling us, right? So certainly at a local level, our King County Council, they want to hear from the cities, and we share, even when our cities perhaps oppose a particular recommendation we have, we always share that because that's important to our own council. I think the same is true at the state level. So as we are in legislative discussions on these various matters, whether it's right now, again, a big focus that King County is actively kind of engaging in is this extended producer responsibility, or EPR. And what we see, as I've had a chance to testify in a few committee hearings, is that there is broad interest from across the state, from local governments who are engaging and weighing in on this. And I would just encourage your city to do the same. It does, I think it does matter to the legislators because they are, they're trying to represent you as well. So I hope that answered your question directly, and if not, please just take another shot with me.
Sorry, no, I appreciate that. I think I was going to say, I definitely hear you on the, of course we can sign in pro on a legislative bill. Of course we can use our own voice and weight as a city. I guess I would just see if there's anything at the local level when I guess the word legislation can apply to multiple levels. Is there anything that you've seen other municipalities do specifically as a municipality in their own sort of jurisdiction that has made an impact?
Yes. I think I'm getting closer to what you said. Well, I'll use the city of Renton as one example. They were an early adopter in changing the schedule, the collection schedule for curbside services. So I mentioned earlier that most of the materials that go into our curbside cans, most of those are recyclable. So Renton did a dramatic switch, and they said recyclables will be collected every week and garbage will be collected every other week. And they've seen their overall recycling rates dramatically rise with that. People have been able to reduce the size of their garbage carts, potentially paying less for a smaller cart because they've realized they haven't needed them. So that's an example of a local government taking action that had direct impacts for that community because they got to see their recycling rates increase as a result of that.
Okay, any further questions? Mr. McLaughlin, thank you for giving your time this evening, and we appreciate your presentation.
It was my pleasure. We appreciate the partnership that we have with your fine city of Newcastle, and please consider us a resource. And we do hope that you will consider taking action to sign that city pledge. We would love to add your name to our a list of leaders in this region relative to RE+. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Patty Lou if we can provide any additional assistance or information that could inform that action.
Okay, again, thanks to Director Bronze for managing the microphones. Wow, that's always fun, I'm sure. We have about 15 minutes in between our study session and our regular session, so please be back at the dais and ready to begin at 7 p.m.
It's red now, so it's.
regular meeting of Tuesday, February 7. The time is 7 p.m. This public meeting is being recorded and may be viewed later on the city's YouTube channel. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, City Clerk White, will you please call the roll?
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Here.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Villasenor.
Here.
Councilmember Lacotia.
Here.
Councilmember Charbonneau. Councilmember Clark. Here. Mayor Newing.
Here.
7 members present and accounted for.
Thank you, sir. Tonight we have a quorum of 7. Everyone's here. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to item number 3. Is there any objection to approval of tonight's agenda as presented? Seeing none, final agenda is approved as presented. All right, public comment. This is our first opportunity for public comment. There is a clock on the podium. And please, when you come to the podium, state your name and area in which you reside. You will have 3 minutes in which to speak. And when that buzzer goes off, I will ask you to quickly wrap up and take a seat. I have 3 people signed up. First, I have Steve Williams. There he is. Good evening, Mr. Williams.
Hello, I'm Steve Williams, Vice President of the Newcastle Historical Society, and I'm here tonight to invite you all to the Newcastle Beach Park next Saturday, February 11th at 12 o'clock noon. Many of your residents will be marching through town or hiking down the very popular Coal Creek Trail to a rally there at the beach in support of completing Coal Creek Park. What is needed is the purchase of a 12-acre parcel at the southern end of Lakemont Boulevard, opposite the Red Town Trailhead. It's the last private parcel between Coal Creek Park and Cougar Mountain Regional Wildland Park. In fact, it's where the animals cross the road, making it a very critical wildlife corridor. It would be a much safer place for people to cross as well. The 5-acre pasture right there next to the western side of Lakemont Boulevard. And some of you might remember Milt Swanson had a coal car mounted there right next to the road. The pasture land provides a unique habitat for pheasants, quail, and other birds and animals not found in the surrounding forests. We want to preserve the meadow and the 90-year-old barn next to it. They both remind us of our local farming history and the need for horses for the first 50 years of logging, farming, and coal mining before cars were ever invented. The back area parcel would have room for badly needed trailhead parking, and a plaza with interpretive signs and public programs could be offered in front of the barn. That's where Milt Swanson, the last coal miner in the area, hosted hikers and school groups to tell them about 100 years of mining that happened right underneath their feet. In 1917, when World War I created such a high demand for coal, over 1,000 people lived and worked right there at Coal Creek. On February 11th, next Saturday, Claudia Balducci, the former mayor of Bellevue and current King County Council member, will be speaking about all of this, as well as Doug McClelland, chair of the Mountains to Sound Greenway Board, and Sally Lawrence, chair of the Safe Coal Creek Steering Committee. So we're inviting you to come and listen, and also to talk to your own constituents. These 2 parks, Coal Creek and Cougar Mountain, are very important to them, because they offer over 55 miles of hiking trails, waterfalls, a salmon stream, and lots of fresh air and nature to enjoy. It's quite a contrast to all the apartments and close-packed buildings at the Newcastle Commons. So we think it's really important to save this connection between the 2 parks for us, for our children, and for future generations. And if you have questions, I could answer them now.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. All right, next speaker, Philip Schmidt-Pathman. Good evening, Mr. Schmidt-Pathman.
Good evening, council. You've seen the paperwork, like a little flyer I handed to, I think Jeff handed out on my behalf to everybody. And instead of reading this tonight, I'm here to talk to you about waste. And some of you already know me from past and so on. I have about 25 years of experience in waste management. And I was on the King County Advisory Council or Committee for 8 years, from 2008 to 2016. And in anticipation, before you even heard this presentation from Mr. McLaughlin, I already wrote this statement from our entity because we don't see any changes that are really going to happen. We hear a lot of talking, we hear a lot of direction that is given, and yet the elephant in the room is not being addressed. That's a problem. And the address, as some of you have heard me before, the elephant in the room is actually the landfill in Cedar Hills. And the discussion about how to get things out of a landfill. Landfill has to be understood as a financial concept. Landfills are cheap. Landfills are, in context, when we talk a lot about it, it's like the oil and gas industry, it's subsidized. And that means that landfills are artificially cheap as in don't incorporate the long-term costs, the true environmental impact, and so on and so on. So if we really would account for all these costs for landfill, it would be much, much more expensive than what we pay for today. And one of the things that stood out and that has us very concerned is, and that's also in what we stated here, is that for every ton of waste no longer going to that landfill, King County said in a presentation to council in December of 2022 that they need to raise the fees. Okay, that's when I talked to my colleagues. We have colleagues, the institute, by the way, of this is actually located here in Newcastle, but we have offices in Denmark, we have offices in Germany, and we have colleagues all over the place. We work with universities, institutes, and we're really here to correct false information and correct that. So the statement, I would say, take your own time to read this at your convenience, rather than me reading it through in a really quick flyby and just talking about this and just trying to read it all off. The best approach, I would say, like when Mr. McLaughlin is asking for your support, say, what's your exact plan to get rid of that landfill? How much longer are you going to expand it? Because the county continues to expand that landfill for 30 years, and the recycling rate today is lower than it was 20 years ago. So they recycle less because everything goes into a single bin, and it goes to MRFs, the material they call material recovery facilities. Most of that stuff is contaminated, and we anticipate or we believe that the recycling rate is not at 52% in King County, but below 20%. And that's very reflective of what you find in New York and many other cities across the country, very well studied. And so, we made a suggestion on here. What could be, what you could do to move this process forward and to help in that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your time.
All right, next speaker on my list is Carol Simpson. Good evening, Mrs. Simpson.
Hi, good evening. Carol Simpson. I'm from the Vineyards. I also wanted to speak a little bit more about garbage and solid waste. King County does it really well in poopy waste. They developed one of the most high-tech processing plants up at Woodinville in the Brightwater. It was such a big project, they had to hire 2 different contractors to build it. It was so expensive. But it's the most high-tech processing of liquid waste around. We can do better with solid waste, I think. We can do more styrofoam recycling projects. It would be appropriate for Newcastle to have one right after Christmas, so we can all take our styrofoam from Christmas time down to a simple way to recycle styrofoam. Recycling is not free. Maybe you noticed on your bill a few years ago that there was a credit for recycling for about $4 that took that off the total cost of your garbage bill. Well, that disappeared when most of the recycling products couldn't be shipped to China and they couldn't be recycled. There aren't enough places in the United States making plastic into new plastic, making glass into new glass, creating new products out of what we're throwing out. new packaging and new plastics are coming out faster in new formulations than recycled companies can accommodate. So it's just not happening. I used to put a lot of things in my recycle bin thinking, oh, it's going to get recycled. It's not. That was called wishful recycling. And I would suggest that maybe when Renton went to garbage service once every other week and recycling every week, that they got a lot of contaminated recycling loads because everybody was throwing more stuff that's not allowed in their recycle bins. Newcastle went into a new contract in 2019 for our hauler. We only started in 2009. We went many years before they entered into a contract for hauling. And that was to our detriment, to you, me, all the residents of Newcastle. We were paying King County rates. So I was really excited when I learned in 2009 that we were entering into a contract, because that started the clock. Because in 2019, then we could bid it and get the best price. But unfortunately, that's when China stopped accepting a lot of the recycling materials. And a lot of the haulers were going, not only did they haul it to King County, but they recycle it. They all have their recycling facilities. So they're recyclers also. They wouldn't bid. So we were up against the 8 ball when we went to bid. So look for 2029, if you still plan to be on council then, to get a better bid for our hauling service, right? So, and Philip is right. The elephant in the room is when the landfill is going to close. That was all I heard about for 10 years being on the MISWAC committee. It's going to close in 2023, 2025, 2028. They opened up new areas and they're piling higher,
Please
much
wrap
to the
up.
chagrin of the residents surrounding the landfill. You wouldn't want to live around there. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right, that's all I have signed up, but are there any other members of the audience who'd like to make public comment? We have a virtual. Go ahead, Director Bronze.
Okay, we've got one virtual. I will promote you to panelist to make your public comment. Just a moment while you're transferred, please. Okay, just a moment while I adjust the audio settings so you can speak. Okay, go ahead. You have 3 minutes to make your public comment. Go ahead, please.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was having trouble. I had trouble signing into the website to this meeting, so I didn't hear everybody else. My name is Janet Dobrowolski, and I live next to the landfill. And I wanted to comment about the 2019 Comprehensive Solid Waste Plan calls for the zero waste by 2030. And that's only 7 years from now. And they're just now putting their RE Plus program together to try to accomplish this, which is commendable. However, they're still in the planning and discovery stage and may not be implemented for a year, several years. So their capacity, Pat was talking about how they can reduce their waste going there, but I don't think it will be reduced considerably until 4, 5, 6 years from now. So a new comprehensive plan is scheduled for 2026, and an alternative expansion plan they've chosen is alternative 2 that will potentially extend the life of the landfill to 2038, which is 12 years from the 2026 comprehensive plan. So Pat has stated before that it takes 10 to 12 years to find an alternative to the landfill, another disposal method besides the landfill. So given that the alternative 2 is scheduled to be complete around 2038, they need to have a decision on what their next alternative is by 2026 to give them lead time to do it. Even though they say that they might, this new program might reduce the waste going to the landfill and possibly extend it for a couple, 2 or 3 years. And because of that, I think I would like to urge the cities to demand that they have an alternative in place. A decision made on what they're going to do following the landfill closure or when it is, quote, full. Because if they wait till 2030, when they supposedly have this re-PC and all this zero waste, there's not going to be time to put together another, the alternative disposal method by then. And at that time, if they wait, then what they'll probably do is go select alternative 3 to give them more time again. And that's what they've done continually. They constantly say, we're going to close it, we're going to close it. Oops, we don't have time to implement anything, so we're going to extend it. And they've done that time, like the lady before me stated that. And I have a letter in 2001 from the lawyers from King County that stated
Would you please wrap up your comments, please?
So, I'm sorry, did I go over time? I'm sorry.
Yes, so you can just please wrap up.
What's that?
If you could just please wrap up your comments, thank you.
Okay, I think the bottom line is, I would really encourage, they don't listen to the people around the landfill. We carry no weight at all to what their decisions are, but the cities do. So I would really encourage the cities to demand that they have an alternative, a decision made on what alternative they're going to be done, selected in the next 2026 comprehensive plan that they will put together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, no further virtual. Okay, that'll conclude our public comment. I'll close that first public comment period. We have no ceremonial presentations tonight. Council comment. Councilmember Griffin, what do you have for us?
No comment tonight.
Councilmember Villasenor?
Thank you. Tonight, while we're here, the President of the United States is presenting his State of the Union, which got me thinking a little bit about the state of our own community. We continue to be blessed by and challenged by change, and there are so many people here who are putting in a lot of effort and time in making Newcastle the type of city that they envision being the best place to live. So I see outgoing Chief Hauk and incoming Chief Kojihira here tonight, and I consider that being blessed by change. We have that, and I think we'll have some comments later. But unfortunately, our Director of Finance will no longer be who's retiring as a challenge, a change. But we are here, and I'm thankful for the people who are here, and I hope that this environment of participation continues to flourish.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Lacotia?
No comments, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Charbonneau?
I just wanted to give a quick thank you to Representative Tana Sen, King County Councilmember Sarah Perry, Seattle Port Commissioner Sam Cho, and folks, directors from King County Metro. We did a walkthrough and short discussion right here in the a walkthrough of City Hall and a short discussion up to a fellowship group of young people in politics that I'm an alum of myself, and it was a really great experience to get to show them. It was a Eastside King County focus day for young folks that work in politics from around the state, and we really got to talk and show them what a small city and that sort of government looks like, and it was really humbling to give that back to those folks, and great to host them here in Newcastle.
Councilmember Clark, what do you have?
Thank you, Mayor Newing. My comments tonight are regarding the slurry seal project we had last summer. I spoke with City Manager Pingle and Director Bronze today, and recently, and I said, please, come up with some answers we have for the public, right? We may think, or we may say, or we may hear that it's okay, but the public's not going to agree. And this neighbor contacted all of us, and I've had other people talk to me because I live on these streets, and they want to know what we're going to do. So I would remind the council that to familiarize yourself with this issue, because I know we're going to hear from the public either now or at the town hall or soon, because we said last year that the streets, we would wait till the weather changed, and then we would look at that and figure out what was going to happen. Hopefully they had smoothed out, but they have not. So I know we're going to hear from the public. So if you haven't driven on those streets lately, I would just familiarize yourself, because we're going to have to answer to the people what the situation with these streets are, what we're going to do, or how we're going to address it, and what the options are. So my comments are just as a reminder that this issue is still out there. And finally, just thank you, Chief Hauk. Appreciate your time. Appreciate it very much, and good luck.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thank you. Just want to echo thank you to Chief Hauk for everything you've done for our community. We will miss you, but we're excited for you for your next adventure, and we're really also very excited to have Chief Kajihiro back here in a new role, and just thank you both for the way that you get involved in our community. I think it's so important.
All right. I just have one brief thing. I know I've said my thanks a number of times personally to Chief Hauk, but I look forward to you driving through, and we still will throw you a wave with all fingers. I know how valuable that was to you, so. All right, just one little thing. I was contacted by the Newcastle Elementary PTA, and they are hosting their annual auction for the first time in person, and what now are we at, 3 years? Down at the Hyatt at Southport on March 10th, which is a Friday, and I do believe tickets are on sale now. And with that, I'll move on, because we have your last call. You're not your last call. That was the wrong thing to say. Your last hurrah here in Newcastle, because you're going to tell us we had no crime in the fourth quarter of 2022.
No, I'm going to set Steve up for success is what I'm going to do.
There you go, Chief Kajihiro. I heard it.
Before I get to that, on your comments, the Newcastle Elementary auction, a ride to school with Chief Kajihiro, I signed him up for that. So
I'll bid.
You may not know that till just now, but that's one of the things you can bid on.
Welcome back, Kaji.
Yeah, so I appreciate everybody's comments that I have gotten, and I'll get to this in just a second, but I appreciate the comments from the council and community that has reached out and said thank you for my time here, and I just want to echo that back to all of you and all of them. I appreciate the support and everything I got from the folks while I was here. The only thing that really kind of disappointed me was right at the end when I posted that Steve would be taking over for me. Of all the posts that I did through the 4 years, that was the most loved and liked one, is that I was leaving. So I didn't really know how to take that. It was, I don't know. I mean, I'm just being honest. They were really cut down to the bone with me on that one.
We're in good hands.
No, I'm just kidding. He's going to be great. You guys are going to be in good hands with him. And like I said, about to show him that he's set up for success here. So, okay, so we're all familiar with this. This is all this information we get from the sheriff's office. It's starting to come in a lot quicker now. Thankfully, our criminal resource and data unit and analysis units getting through these a lot quicker, and our deputies are getting better at finishing the report so we can actually report the crime out to the FBI and get accurate stats back. I did notice just a typo right here. This is through the entire year of 2022, so I apologize there. It's not through the third quarter. Go ahead. I've gone through this again. There's crimes against persons, property, and society. This changed a few years ago. It's all police departments now, essentially, in Washington here for anyway, are reporting crimes this way to the FBI. So the year-end crime comparison. Property crime this year, as compared to last, was up a bit. And we'll get to the specifics on where it went up and went down, stayed the same, that sort of stuff. Crimes against persons, if you recall back, those are like assaults and stuff like that. Property crimes are unfortunately burglaries, car prowls, that sort of stuff. And society are things like drugs and prostitution and that sort of stuff. Specific crime comparisons, so you're going to see the ugly numbers here. Assaults, those went up a bit, and these are tough for us to address because these are not assaults like where you're walking down the street and you get randomly attacked. These, a vast majority of the assaults that we deal with here in the city are domestic violence stuff, and it's tough for the cops to prevent that. I mean, we address it and give resources and stuff to the victims at the time, but a lot of them end up back in the same spot and have the same issue. So it's a tough thing for us to combat and prevent. But like I said, when we do come across the DVs type stuff, we provide the victims with as much resources as we can. The real ugly numbers come from the vehicle thefts and burglaries. It's not from a lack of us trying to catch these people. It's not because anybody's being sloppy with not locking their doors and businesses. It's because crime is up. More people are here, more people are moving into the city. There's more opportunity. I myself spent many hours sitting in my car down the street, driving around, getting complaints about myself or some of my officers that were in here on overtime, driving through your neighborhoods with no lights on, so we can try and sneak up on the people that are breaking into your cars and stuff, and then people call and wonder why the cops are driving down the street with their lights off, and that's why. So we're trying. It's a difficult thing to do to catch these folks, especially the vehicle thefts and the burglaries. It's going up everywhere you look. There isn't a city around where crime went down, and we'll do some comparisons here coming up. Next. Larcenies. Surprisingly, I guess this is not funny for the folks that got their cars stolen, but they're not stealing as much things from your car, they're stealing your car, I guess now, as the taken from auto went down quite a bit, which was surprising and quite pleasing. So the car prowls where people are, getting their purses, computers, wallets, checkbooks, whatever they're leaving in their car getting stolen, that actually went down. And I can't say for sure that it was because we were driving around with our lights off in the middle of the night, but I can't think that hurt. So auto parts, that's like the catalytic converters and stuff like that, that went up. But again, that wasn't for lack of trying, as you all know, as you guys supported our catalytic converter thing. It's something that takes less than 30 seconds to do and can get people a lot of money, and they're finding ways to do it. So go ahead. The arrest went up, so we had more opportunity to make arrests because there was more crime, and then the arrests went up. And that's, again, those are just not necessarily the number of charges, those are the number of people that were booked, definitely booked or charge people with more than just one crime at a time, and that's where those numbers came up. So another a positive, one of the more positive notes here, not for 1,071 folks that drove through the city, but we cracked the 1,000 mark on tickets, largely in part to Matt Treadway, our traffic officer here, who wrote more tickets than anybody on the King County Sheriff's Office. And if you'll recall, he was out January, February, and a lot of March. So in 2.5 months, he was out there doing anything and everything he could to address the traffic complaints that the residents of the city have give to us on a very regular basis. Despite that, the number of accidents actually went up. And I don't know why. I think it might be it's just more people driving, more traffic on 405, construction on 405 that sent people up here. It's one of those things. It doesn't necessarily, more tickets doesn't necessarily mean less accidents, but like I said, Matt and the rest of the deputies too did a good job of addressing those concerns. So. Calls for service went up. 2020 is kind of a tough year to compare anything to because it was COVID and nobody was calling, everybody was at home and all that kind of stuff. But we had a little bit of an increase total number of calls this year. Nothing too significant and nothing, there wasn't anything that really increased in the number of people calling about. So like I said, it's kind of everywhere you look, and it's tough in a city like this where the numbers to begin with are really small. So any increase, any little numbers is a huge percentage increase. But I just wanted to point out, so where I talked about the Newcastle vehicle thefts, for example, they went up 52%. It went up from 40 to 61. Take the two cities that we border, that we literally share streets with. Their increases their percentage was much lower, but Bellevue's total was 630. So that's in the entire city. That just wasn't their increase. That was the total number of cars that were stolen. So more than 10 times the number of cars that were stolen here. And Renton, I don't know how the mayor doesn't get her car stolen at City Hall. There's a lot of car thefts.
It's called a secure parking garage.
There's a lot of car thefts in Renton. So when you consider that we're literally sandwiched between those two cities and we share streets, and the number of cars we got stolen was 500 and, well, I'm not a math major, 570 less than Bellevue and 1,132 less than Renton. A 21 vehicle increase is horrible for those people that got their cars stolen, but it definitely could be worse, and you don't have to go far to see that. So same thing with burglaries. Burglaries are horrible. They make everybody feel violated, business owners, homeowners, all that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to make any light of it, but again, we share streets with these two cities, and we had 53 total in the city, where Renton and Bellevue had 739 and 644. So our increase was more, but when you start with a low number and add just a little bit to it, the percentage is kind of skewed a bit. So, okay. Some happy news. We had multiple events and fundraisers at all the schools, like I was talking about, where Chief Kajahiro is going to give some lucky kids a ride to school. Did those at Hazelwood and at Newcastle this year. We did some back to school events at both the schools. We sent 4 officers to active shooter training, which unfortunately is becoming more and more prevalent, as anybody that watches the news can tell. Because of that, and we used our equipment money. We bought 2 new shields, a ram, and some breaching tools that we're going to be leaving at the schools, the breaching tools. So the rams and shields are with our officers, but the breaching tools will be at the schools and hopefully collect dust and never be used. We upgraded our rifles. The rifles we had were several years old. Some of the equipment on them was old military surplus stuff, and we were able to exchange those for brand new ones with the sheriff's office, all the brand new equipment. And any officer on the department is available to get one of those and qualified to have one. So birthday deliveries, did a lot of those this year. I don't know how many. National Night Out, did that again, lots of fun. I was promised adult beverages. Unfortunately, I was in uniform, so maybe this year when I'm not working, I'll come by and take people up on those. Veterans Day, thanks to Councilmember Clark here, that was a lot of fun for me, and we've got flags again for next year. So the rest were up. Two officers trained for CRAZE instruction, that's the civilian response to active shooter events. I think there was just a post on the Facebook page today about Treadway offering his services for that. So Matt and I got trained up with Matt and trained some of the city staff here, and now they're offering that out. Now that we've sort of tested it in house, they're gonna offer it up around the city here, which is great. Van etching at Lake Morin Park, like I talked about, something that Steve, I would suggest you do again, and I can get you the info for that. Matt, with all those tickets he wrote, got us qualified for several, and actually a few of them just came in. There was a couple that came in last year, but there was some that came in the first quarter of this year from last year, where we ended up getting several $1,000s worth of equipment, including 3 new LiDARs that all because of tickets and grants that Matt really worked hard on. We surpassed last year's ticket total. Like I said, Officer Treadway had the most on the entire department for the sheriff's office. He also, in addition to that, he did 71 car seat checks in the city. So for new parents that, you know, those things are never in, right? Nobody knows how to put them in, and he went to I think it was like a 16-hour class, which is literally how much time it takes to know how to properly do that. He offers that service to residents here, and so, you know, one less thing for the parents to worry about, that make sure that their car seat's in there. Used traffic safety grant money again, which Officer Treadway helped us get for extra traffic patrols to address all those traffic concerns we get. And then we have 2 of our officers here assigned to the city, Deputy Jeffers and Detective Bertner, who are part of the Sheriff's Office crisis negotiation team. So it's a big thing these days, a great tool for us to have very close to us in the city for people suffering mental health events and stuff like that, that, you know, it takes a especially trained person to work with and resolve peacefully and safely for everybody involved. And we've got 2 of those officers right here in our city. So that's it, I think, for the highlights, and I think that's what's. Oh, yeah. Oh, and I skipped over one. I'm sorry, I don't know how I did
Tell
this.
it.
I put in our very own detective, Brittany Bertner, for Detective of the Year for the precinct that is covered, the Sheriff's Office Precinct 3 that covers Newcastle here, and she won. She then went on to the Sheriff's Office one, and she didn't win that. I think it was rigged, but no, she won for all of Precinct 3, which is great. She works hard, does a lot of stuff for the city, and has been great. So now that's it, I think. Questions?
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Any questions for Chief, former Chief, for Jason? Councilmember Charbonneau.
Yeah, thank you, I guess, former chief, for your service. I had a question for you as well for our new chief. I was thinking of, you know, obviously having, returning to Newcastle, and I think there were, you said your most popular social media post. For me, I think that's people just celebrating you, for the record. But and also excited as well. What I think, something I think about a lot is that to me, I think it's great if folks that are in the community can know the law enforcement officers that are serving them. From what you've told me as well, and I hope most officers feel this way, they feel they like getting to know the people they're serving in their community as well. What are ways that you would recommend, and asking this specifically too, as we have new leadership coming in, for folks to get to know the people who are in law enforcement? Is it a means of going up and talking to them when they see them? Is there other means that are easier for you all and more, just a better setting for you all? What's the best way to go about doing that, including, I know, the events that you mentioned with the auction and such?
We've had here, usually I tried to, whenever we brought somebody new in, I would put something out on our Facebook page, and Kate Langsdorf with the city would repost that as well, kind of just a short bio, like favorite color and hobbies and that sort of stuff. But just in general, we like people to come up and talk to us. We're not going to have any problem. We can't hide. We drive around in a big car that says police and has lights on it, and we stick out. Everybody looks at us anyway when we walk into a store or something like that. If we're busy doing something, like if we're on a traffic stop or we're talking to somebody about something, just wait a minute or wait till the next time you see one of us or something like that. But just don't sneak up on us if we're, if you see somebody that's like parked in the, on the side of the road and they might be down writing a report or doing an accident report or something like that, coming up and banging on the door real quick might not be the best idea. Walk in the front of the car or something, wave your hand, make sure we see you, just say hi. I mean, I can't speak for every officer. I mean, there's, you can't speak for any sort of thing, but I would say a vast majority of police officers, especially around here, enjoy interacting with the public. You can't work in this city and not, at least when you're here with me, and not be able to go out and talk to people and say hi and enjoy interacting with people. If that's not something you can do, you shouldn't be a cop, in my opinion, because that's your job, is to go out and interact with the public, So my feeling would be just we're just like everybody else, except for we're wearing cool stuff, sometimes heavy stuff. We're more than willing to talk to you, say hi. I think just approaching us and treating us just like you would treat anybody else, and friendly conversation. I mean, we may have differences of opinion about stuff, and then maybe trying to debate somebody about something, that might not be the best thing, but just say hi, wave your hand, wave at us, all the fingers, all 5, the 4 and a thumb. Steve, anything different? I don't want to speak for Steve.
Yeah, everything what Jason said, but also I already have plans to do a Meet the Chief event, like coffee with the chief and coffee with the city manager. So we have that in plans. Hopefully that'll happen in March. And I've been in talks with neighboring agencies about doing the exact same thing, like partnering with them with a cup of coffee with a cop. So just approach, talk to me. I'll have coffee, have lunch with you guys. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, if I can help amplify that, let me know. I mean, I won't speak for my colleagues too, but yeah, I think we'd love to promote that. So.
Councilmember Villasenor.
Yeah, one quick question on the home burglary piece. Do we have a feel for the effectiveness of home alarms and those kinds of things with regard to burglary? Do we know that, do we have a feel for the effectiveness of having a home alarm as a deterrent to home burglary?
So that's a tough question because we don't know the burglaries that haven't been committed because of a home alarm. You see what I'm saying? Like, we don't know how many people went, well, that home's got an alarm, I'm not gonna break into it. What I've said, and from my experience as a detective, they are helpful if they work and they're set, but a lot of the people that are doing this, they aren't thinking clearly to begin with. You know, they've either got some mental health issues or some substance issues, and an alarm, just somebody that's bold enough and has the gall to break into somebody's house to begin with doesn't necessarily mean that if Protection One or Safe, whatever, you know, whatever alarm company sticker you've got in your window or in your yard is gonna deter somebody. But I have talked to people that will move on, that have said, well, yeah, I mean, this is just from my experience as a detective, and I'm sure it's been amplified by people that I haven't talked to. We have found, though, that most of the burglaries we've gone to are not, the alarm isn't on at the time. Like, it was, you know, in the middle of the night and the garage door was open. So that counts as a burglary now, whereas a couple years ago that we probably would have theft from a building or something like that. So if you leave your garage door open and somebody goes in and steals your bike, that's considered a burglary. And there's no alarm because the door is already open and that sort of stuff. But the break in through your back door, we don't get very many of those. And we go to all alarm calls in the city, and very, very few that I can remember ever taking, you know, reviewing were, you know, the deputy responded to the house because the alarm was going off, nobody was home, and the house was actually broken into. So I don't have specific numbers, but it doesn't hurt. And alarms don't hurt, I can tell you that.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thanks. I see on social media a lot people posting videos or pictures from security cameras, like, these people, they got deterred because my car was locked, but they tried to get in. Should they be reporting all that stuff to you guys? Or, I know when they just post on social media, you're not necessarily going to see it. But I'm just curious if there's anything we can do when we see that stuff or hear about it. Like, should they contact you all? I guess maybe this is more of a question to the new chief, but is an email good? I'm just curious.
I will defer to this question on how he wants. When I can tell you what I asked people to do, if you want me. Okay, I asked people to tell us about that because we may not be able to do anything about it, and we may not even come out and do anything about it. But we'll know. Okay, well, this neighborhood this night was really targeted, so let's try either that neighborhood or some, it can give us an idea of where we need to be looking.
Right.
Like I said, there's probably not a whole lot we can do about it if somebody's just on the outside of your car trying the door, something like that. But
So then is it just an email to you is the best form of that, or like filing something?
A lot of that can be reported online, so I don't know the website right offhand, but you can just report it online on the sheriff's office website.
Okay, so the sheriff's office, not necessarily Newcastle specific.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's, do you
so
know?
it's reportsheriff.org.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Yeah, you can fill out, there's all sorts of things you can fill that out on there, and then it comes to us as a report. It's fairly user simple, or user friendly, but
Okay.
it's a computer program, so some people will have a problem with it.
Yeah, and to Chief Kajihiro, I know Jason always preferred email. Is that the same for you for like the best way to contact you? Okay.
Yeah, I think email would be best.
Okay, great.
Anything else? Chief Houck, thank you.
Thank
Stay
you all very
safe out
much.
there,
Appreciate it.
and we hope to see you in the future. Chief Kajihiro, we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All All right, moving on to council committees. Any finance committee? Did you meet?
No finance committee. We might have to approve a contract this month, so we might be getting together. But as far as the regular meetings go, we are waiting for interim finance director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Salary and benefits did not meet. There is a report included for a regional committee in the packet. Anything else on regional? Councilmember Clark?
I'll just make a comment on those attachments. It was something I failed to send last time for the meeting, but it's the items we're talking about in the Metropolitan Solid Waste Committee, the legislative items related to solid waste and a proposal to find a solution for the landfill.
Councilmember Charbonneau?
Yeah, and I apologize, I wasn't able to get items specifically in. I was still battling with health items and figuring that out. But I attended Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Advisory Committee for the county, and then next week I'll be attending Regional Transit Committee and Domestic Violence Prevention Work Group for the Task Force for the county. Sorry, there's a lot of different names. Task Force for the county. If colleagues or folks from the public have input, I'd welcome that, of course, too, going into those meetings, and I always want to encourage that.
Okay, we do have a planning commission report in the packet. If you have any questions, I'm sure Director Hoffman would be happy to answer them. You're off the hook, Director. City Manager Pingle, what do you have?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Just a couple of things. First, just everyone's seen that we're not recruiting a deputy finance director anymore. We're recruiting a finance director. Our first review date for that is March 13th, so just for your information. A couple of things to follow up on. If you have not been able to complete the assessment or the Survey Monkey that Jan Dwyer-Bang sent out, she's our retreat facilitator, she would love for you to do that as soon as possible so that she can get Friday prepared. And then I had forwarded on a couple of emails from our lobbyist to the council regarding a couple of bills that she was asking if we wanted to weigh in on or do anything about. The first one had to do with being required to allow cannabis establishments to be in town. My understanding of that one is that in order to prevent that, if the bill would pass, it would have to go to a vote of the people. And so really on both of them, I'm just looking for I'm not necessarily looking for, do we want to do anything about it as the city of Newcastle? And so I could certainly testify or express something from the city if we want. And so that's really the main question. And so that's the cannabis one. Any comments on that? And really what I'm asking is, this wasn't a part of our, part of the legislative session is, we're going to have to be reactionary a little bit. There'll be things that weren't in our legislative agenda. And so really just wanted to get a sense if we want to weigh in or do something about it.
Any questions or comments on this topic? Councilmember Charbonneau.
Sorry, just clarifying. So are you saying we're going to discuss this at the retreat, or we want to, it would be more appropriate discussion? Okay.
I don't know. This would be separate. So I'm just asking for feedback from the council right now. If you, and simply from, I had forwarded on Holly Kochi, our lobbyist, she sent on a couple of emails regarding a couple of bills and asking for if we wanted her or our delegation, or if we as the city wanted to weigh in.
Anything? City Manager Pingle, I would, really appreciate if you could make or give testimony on the cannabis. That's, something I certainly would not want to see here in Newcastle. It's in other cities. We've seen some, news segments on the violent crimes involved in these establishments, and I certainly do not want that here in our city. Anyone else? Councilmember Villasenor.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor in that there are a couple of. There's certainly a safety risk due to the nature of not because I'm anti-cannabis, but because the nature of those businesses, they're heavy in cash, and so they become targets for theft, and we've seen that in Bellevue and Renton where there have been armed robberies of, and that's scary. There's also this sort of reputational risks in terms of how we're viewed as a city, or how our citizens view our city, and we're such a small, compact commercial zone that any cannabis-related dispensary would really be forefront of what people see as they drive down Cold Creek. So there's a lot of I think there are a lot of risks involved in having businesses like that, and then the simple fact that the state would take that out of our hands from a city perspective, that we wouldn't be able to decide, I think is probably, for me, even the larger issue at hand. So I think we should be able to make that decision for or against. I don't think we want the state to make that decision for us.
Yeah, local control is so important in a small community. Councilmember Charbonneau.
Yeah, so I appreciate my colleagues sharing. I'm getting a feel for, I think, the way the city will weigh in on this. I just have a question I'm just posing. I guess it could, for the city manager, I guess we can pose it to Holly, as well as, I guess there's something that's striking me is I think it's, while we don't have any cannabis retailers within the city, I think there are cannabis retailers not too far outside, right? I think in Factoria, I know there definitely are. In Renton, just along Cold Creek and past, I think there certainly are. So I guess I'd be curious. I think if we talk about violent crimes, because they do have to deal in cash, and that is a higher incidence of potential theft, would that potentially involve our police and law enforcement response as well? I think to me, it's just something a thought I'm sharing as we're bringing this up for discussion, is the us being surrounded by some of those entities and what that means for us. And I think it's definitely something we can continue to talk about, and I'd love to hear an update on how this progresses as well.
Okay. All right.
The other one, I think is, I'll have to check on hearing dates and stuff. I think the other one was not as far along, was the one about Lunar New Year. It's Reptiles. At least a preliminary read through. I have a couple of questions for her, and I don't know that one's quite as urgent, but Holly was asking about that one as well.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'll disclose I'd had a one-on-one conversation with Reptile, not in incredible detail about this, but I think this is more of just recognizing a holiday bill, and we can have a further conversation with any concerns. But I think it'd be a great thing to, I think supporting efforts of our specific legislators is great if it's something that can be meaningful. I know we have the sign we have on our door right now, talking about how there's no weapons allowed in this public spaces because of something we supported from Representative Sen. So I think this would be a great thing to potentially support. I would definitely be in favor of supporting it in that effort, especially given the large API community we have here. I think that could be a really, really worthy endeavor.
Okay. All right. We will move on to the consent agenda. Is there any objection to approval of tonight's unanimous consent agenda as presented? Okay, seeing none, I show the consent agenda approved as presented. We do have a public hearing tonight. So the public hearing is for adoption of Resolution 2023-934, relinquishment of existing utility easement for the reserve at Wind Tree Short Plat. Just to preface before we move on, There is an order outlined on your agenda. We'll open the public hearing, receive a staff presentation followed by council member questions. Then the floor will be open for public testimony. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to testify during the hearing, please add your name to the sign-up list now if you haven't done so already. And we will call your name when it's your turn to speak. After testimony, there will be an opportunity for council members' comments, after which we will close the public hearing and proceed to motions. Are there any questions about the order of the public hearing? All right, seeing none, the time is 8 p.m. The public hearing on the adoption of Resolution 2023-934, relinquishment of existing utility easement for the reserve at Windtree Short Plant, is now open. All right. Anybody sign up over there? Oh, I'm sorry.
So, council, I've got a very brief presentation for you tonight. This is just duplicative of what's in your packet. So, where we're talking about is the Windtree 5 plat. So, it's located south of May Creek Park Drive, adjacent to May Creek Park, the yellow triangle on the screen. And then zooming in a little bit, it's at the southeast corner of what's known as the Windtree neighborhood. And let's see, so, I'm sorry. I got my order a little backwards here, I'm sorry. So what is, I just tried to do a little who, what, where, when, and why. What is two public utility easements that are existing, where within Tract B of the Windtree plat, which was platted in 1994 before incorporation, and I'll go back to a map to show you these. Why the existing easements in the Windtree plat conflict with a new 7-lot short plat that is within that Tract B. And then how does this get resolved is the city council adopts the resolution before you and authorizes the city manager to execute an easement termination. And so here's the two graphics. The one on the left is the entirety of the Windtree 5 plat. And one thing I'm just going to point out real quick, the graphic on the right is a subset of, so that the yellow area on the left is enlarged, and that's the yellow area on the right. So the component of the Windtree plat, Tract B, is what is then being further subdivided into a 7-lot short plat. And then the utility easements that are at play, the existing plat has a storm drainage easement shown in orange on the left, as well as a water line easement shown in blue. And the reason there's a conflict is you can see on the right, they've created new lots along the east side of the border, property border, and so they've relocated the utility easement out to the front of the property instead of the back. And then they've relocated the storm drain easement to be along the property lines. And what's not highlighted just to the left of the blue is a Tract A. It's a private access and utility easement. So that's going to be the private road for accessing those lots. It's not a public street, but there will also be an opportunity for utilities in that location as well. And that is it, the recommended actions before you. And then we've got first questions, and then I'll guess that's the next step, and then we do public testimony.
Okay, any questions? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and now open the public testimony is open. Is there anyone who has signed up? Anybody virtual, Director Bronze? Okay.
No.
All right, I don't have any testimony. So moving on to discussion on the council. Any motions, any comments? Any motions?
Madam Mayor, it'd be
Yes,
discussion, then close the hearing, then.
Yep, any comments? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Now, I'll take a motion. I seem to be twisting things around.
I'll move to adopt Resolution 2023-934, authorizing the city manager to execute the easement termination for the utility easement as presented.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Villasenor, seconded by Councilmember Griffin, to adopt Resolution 2023-934, authorizing the city manager to execute the easement termination for the utility easement as presented. Councilmember Villasenor, would you like to speak to your motion?
No comments.
Thank you. Anything to add, Councilmember Griffin?
No, I think Director Braun pretty well explained it.
Okay. All right, with that, I will go ahead and we'll take action on the motion to adopt Resolution 2023-934, authorizing the city manager to execute the easement termination for the utility easement as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right. We have no unfinished business. We have no general business. We will now open the floor for additional public comment. Anybody signed up? Okay, Carol Simpson, go ahead. Again, 3 minutes to speak, and please state your name and the residential area in which you reside.
Hi, Carol Simpson, Vineyard. A week ago Tuesday, January 31st, in the morning, my husband and I were dropping off his vehicle at the Ford place to have it serviced on 116th and Bellevue. And while I was waiting in the car, right next to the sidewalk, I saw an old man walking down the sidewalk with a walker. And he was really old, and it was really cold that morning, and I felt for him. He looked cold. And he's walking down the street, and I thought, we need to offer this guy a ride. And so as soon as my husband came out, we went down to the corner and offered this gentleman a ride. And he accepted. And he got in our car. I turned the heater up, turned the seat heater on because he looked so cold. And he really had to lift his leg in. And he was elderly and had short hair, wearing camouflage pants and a blue shirt, not unlike mine. No gloves, no hat. It was cold. And we asked him where he was going. He said, I'm going to the Renton Landing. Can I go to the Renton Landing? I didn't think he was going to go that far. 116th, I noticed he was wearing a wristband from the hospital, and it seems like he just got it released from the hospital. And I thought, this old man just got released from the hospital, and he's walking home. Well, he was going to get the 240 to Renton, but he was on the wrong side of the freeway, and he was just going the wrong way to get to the bus. It was a long walk. He was on the east side of the freeway. The 240 goes on the west side of the freeway. So we're heading down the freeway to Renton to drop him off to wherever he wanted to go. We're both retired. We have time. Let's give him a ride. We're going to do a good thing today. And he's talking the whole time. He's retired. He's a veteran. He has a kid who lives in Spokane Valley, etc., and he needed to get to the landing. Well, we got to the landing. Well, where do you need to go? Well, can I borrow your phone? My phone is broken. And he dialed up numbers. He called his bank. He remembered the bank phone number. He remembered his account number. He remembered how to log in. Holy crap, I need my paperwork to do that. He had it all memorized. How much is in my bank account? He had $35 in his bank account. It's January 31st. His VA didn't arrive till the next day. He needed money. He didn't have a place to live. All we had was $5 in our wallets because we don't need cash. We're well off. We can debit, we can credit. We left him off there and gave him $5, and off he went. And he even called the VA, the housing, but they have no way to get back to him because he has no operating phone. He's a veteran. This is my really first, I've been a do-gooder, given money to all kinds of things, the YWCA. I know we have a homeless population. This was my first experience with a guy I got to know that we worried all about him the next day. He called us at 1:30 a.m. Can you come help me? It's 1:30 in the morning in the night. We don't know what we would be driving to help him, what kind of situation we could get ourselves into. I hope he finds a place. I don't know what kind of services he could get. He's a veteran. And his name was Alvin or Irvin or something. It was hard to understand. He had a speech impediment. It was hard to understand him. And with my hearing, it was even harder. He had that speech impediment that he had to get over his entire life.
We need you
But
to
he
wrap up,
served.
please.
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, any further public comment? I'll close the public comment. Planning calendar, City Manager Pingle.
Thank you, Mayor. Just looking towards February 21st, the main things we have coming back are the design contract for the railroad embankment, as well as the compost procurement ordinance. Moving forward to the March 7th meeting, we'll have executive session that meeting for my 6-month review. I know everyone's looking super forward to that.
And that railroad embankment, that's the stormwater project, correct?
That's right.
Yes. Okay, not the trail, the stormwater project. Okay.
Other than that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for City Manager Pingle? Councilmember Clark?
Just one, you had mentioned in your notes the May 2nd possibility for a retreat. So I'm in favor of that date. I think we should set that or sooner than later. I don't know what anybody else's opinion is, but.
For town hall.
Actually, town hall.
Town hall. What did I say?
Yeah, retreat.
Oh, I'm so excited, right? I can't wait. Town hall, yes, that's what I meant. So that's just my 2 cents, so thank you.
Yeah, unless there's other comments or if there's opposition to that, we can start planning towards that date. I definitely, I certainly, probably need to do a little homework on what we've tried to do for town halls. Just because every city does them differently and whatnot, but certainly that's something that if we can get ahead of and make sure council has a chance to weigh in and we can plan together, that'd be great.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
And we would do that in lieu of a council meeting, correct? Because that's on a Tuesday? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of that. And are we looking at, are you still looking into stuff, but I know we've talked about potentially doing it at Risden or at the golf club.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I think historically the golf club's in use, correct? Mm-hmm. But certainly we can look at other options.
Councilmember Lakota.
I just have a request for the next town hall. Can the council be involved with the agenda and, with the initial planning? Because last time, none of us, at least, not me, and I know a few were not, we had no idea what the agenda is going to be, what the timing is going to be, and none of that was known to, and what questions, it was like last minute, we sent some questions and things like that. So I would appreciate if the council could be involved in the initial planning.
Any other questions? Councilmember Charbonneau?
Yeah, I'll express this at the retreat as well. I just think I would definitely be open. I have a general desire to maybe do it potentially at a higher frequency than annually as well. I think additionally, if there's ever a possibility and I recognize that would run into the conflict of traditionally we've canceled a meeting for it. So I would definitely be open to, as well, if there's ever the possibility to, I don't know, perhaps do it on a weekend, or maybe I'm just thinking on a weeknight, maybe if you have young kids, it might be hard to come or something like that. So I definitely want to continue to have that conversation about how do we make it more accessible, having it more frequently. When can we have it? That would make sense for people, but I would love to do more of it.
Any other comments, questions? All right, with that, we're adjourned.